This week, the sun finally decided to come out, so stay tuned to find out what fragrances I decided to wear. Hey, what's going on? Hunter here and welcome back to my channel where I upload weekly fragrance content, so of course you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below if you also love fragrances, and be sure to follow me over on my Instagram page. But for all my returning subscribers that tunes in to this series, I hope you all had a fantastic week and smelling absolutely amazing. I know I certainly did. And for everyone that is new to this series, we basically run down what fragrance I wear on each day, how many sprays, the kind of weather, and if that fragrance got any compliments or not. So let's get right into Sunday. So Sunday was in the low 40s and rainy outside, and I pull out my newest Louis Vuitton, and it is Les Sauvage Roses. This is, of course, just like that name suggests, guys, a rose-dominant fragrance. And this is Louis Vuitton's take on that rose oud, not ombre nomad, which in my opinion lacks rose completely. It's like a fruity oud. This, though, is rose, like primarily 90% rose and a slight hint of oud with a little bit of this spicy saffron. For any rose lovers out there, you have to at least get your nose on this because the rose comes across very natural smelling. I think there's two different roses in here as well. And just all in all, a beautiful creation by Louis Vuitton. So on Sunday, I did do 6 sprays of Les Sauvage Roses. Did go to church, didn't really do much outside of that, got no compliments, but man, I am so glad to have this a part of my collection, even though it's not my favorite Louis Vuitton, not even my favorite within the Middle Eastern collection, but I will be reviewing this beauty very, very soon. Monday was in the high 30s and cloudy outside. I pulled out a new fragrance in the collection, and it is coming from Afnan. This is Taarafi Blue, which has been getting a lot of discussion lately, and this is, of course, inspired by Bulgari Tiger, which we all know is my signature scent right over there. Now I have so many clones of it, so many inspired by fragrances of it as well, and of course the original. This takes the Tiger DNA and does a little bit of a twist. It's not an exact clone, which I kind of respect more about Afnan is because the ones I've tried at least aren't clones of the fragrance they're inspired by. They kind of take that DNA and change it up a little bit, which is exactly the case with this. It kind of also has this blue style shower gel type of vibe alongside that Tiger DNA. Hence the name Taarafi Blue, of course. But if you do love Tiger, you will absolutely love this as well, especially for the price. You can get these for around like 35, 40 bucks. And on that day, I did go 10 sprays of Taarafi Blue, which this stuff is very, very strong. Got 2 compliments. The first one came from a coworker. She was almost like, it seemed like a mile behind me, if I'm being honest. She was way back there. She's like, hey Hunter, I can smell your trail all the way back here and it smells very good. So the sillage was pumping off of this thing, like over 10 feet behind you when you're walking. So performance, no issues with this. And then it's also funny, I had another coworker kind of walk by and she's talking about somebody smelling bad. And I kind of made a joke, like, hey, you guys saying I smell bad? She's like, no, Hunter, you never smell bad, which I thought was hilarious. I just had to butt in because I'm known as that guy when it comes to smelling good. So that's what I tried for Monday. Got 2 compliments, is Taarafi Blue. Let me know if you guys had the chance to check this one out yet. Tuesday was in the low 40s and cloudy outside, and I pulled out yet again another new fragrance from Afnan, and this is the one that gets a ton of hype. It is Supremacy, Not Only Intent, which is inspired by that, of course, aventus hacivat scent profile, and they did a fantastic job with it. I can totally see why this fragrance has gotten so much hype in the community, especially since you can get around the $40 just like the previous Afnan, which you honestly cannot beat for that price. And of course, I did it yet again, 10 sprays of Not Only Intent, and this is even stronger than the Taarafi Blue because this is actually an extrait de parfum. I believe the Supremacy line from Afnan is like their higher end line, so to say. I of course own this one now and also Supremacy in oud, which I need to review both of them here shortly. And I did get 3 compliments with this fragrance, so this is a compliment magnet for sure, without a doubt. The first compliment came from a coworker. She's like, wow, that smells really good today, and I prefer it over the fragrance you wore yesterday, which I don't know if I should have been offended by that because, of course, we know Taarafi Blue is the Tiger DNA, which is my signature scent, but I'm just messing around. This fragrance probably will get you more compliments than Tarothi Blue, even though they're both compliment beasts. I had another coworker ask me if I've worn that before because it smells really good and kind of familiar. And I kind of explained to her that it is very similar to a very popular fragrance, which I have worn around those people, especially the clones as well. So it's a very familiar DNA, and even my coworkers picked up on it. And then later on in the day, around like 8 hours or so, towards the end of the day, I had a coworker ask me if I reapplied this thing because it's still very, very strong. And then one of my coworkers asked me what this was called. I told her the price, and she's like, wow, only 40 bucks. So she was thinking about picking it up. I don't know if for herself or for her man, because this could be slightly more masculine, even though a woman could still pull it off because it is very, very fruity. So that's what I chose for Tuesday is Off Non-Supremacy, Not Only Intense, and expect a review of this soon. Wednesday was in the low 40s and cloudy, and I pulled out another new fragrance from Sensual Obsessions, and this is Imperial Andy, which is their clone of course, Bond No. 9's Andy Warhol, which I've never got my nose on. I know that got a ton of hype, but it is discontinued and skyrocketed in price, of course. And ever since I heard about Sensual Obsessions, probably around like 4 years ago now, I always heard about his Andy Warhol clone. That was like the main thing from him, was this particular fragrance. Finally got it in the collection, and I am very, very impressed. This of course has this very dark, fruity plum note with some earthy oud, and that's basically the main thing that you're gonna detect with this one. I did go 10 sprays, of course, yet again with Imperial Andy. I did get some mixed signals from my coworkers. The first coworker kind of asked me what I was wearing. I said, do you like it? She's like, honestly, not really. And I told her to rate it out of 10. She actually gave it a 4.5, and then I kind of explained what it was, and it's not really gonna be that crowd pleasing because of the oud and things of that nature, because at the end of the day, yeah, this is not really a compliment getting fragrance. However, towards the end of the day, we kind of talked again. She's like, wow, your fragrance actually starts to smell better now than it did in the morning. And she kind of like gave it a 4.5 to a 5.5. And I think it was because more of the vanilla started to come through, less of that earthy oud, and slightly less of that plum note like hours and hours into the day. So this fragrance actually develops very, very nicely on skin, even for it being a clone. Pretty complex, I must say. And then I had another coworker say I smell good, but it's not necessarily her favorite fragrance. And then the last compliment came from a coworker. She said that the fragrance smells really good, and she asked me, is that Mancera's Oud Exclusive? Because maybe a few months ago or so, she asked me what the fragrance I was wearing at that time, and I was wearing an Oud Exclusive. She told me to write it down for her, so I did. So she thought that this was an Oud Exclusive, and I was pretty impressed because, of course, an Oud Exclusive is a oud heavy fragrance, and there's also oud in here. Of course, I told her it's not, but this also has oud, and she said, wow, it smells amazing. So my coworkers are pretty good at detecting fragrances and things like that, but that's what I chose to wear for Wednesday is Imperial Andy from Sensual Obsessions. Thursday was in the high 40s and cloudy outside, and I went with a blast from the past, guys, because this is one of the first fragrances I have in my entire collection that I got maybe around like 7 years ago. And it is Paco Rabanne's 1 Million Lucky. Like I said, this fragrance has been with me for around 7 years now, and I still love it as much as the first day I smelled it. And I remember the first day I smelled this one at Macy's before I was ever really into fragrances or anything like that. I smelled this, I was like, wow, I've never smelled anything quite like that, because this isn't technically something you kind of expect going to a department store. Very nutty from the hazelnuts. Of course, I think there's some honey in here, maybe a little bit of tobacco, and it's just so unique. And probably my favorite from the 1 Million line, even though I don't really have much experience with the elixir or like the new golden oud or anything like that. I do own this one, and I also own the parfum. I'm not a big fan of the original, even though Privé is also another very good one, but I don't own it. On that day, of course, I did 10 sprays, and the performance from this particular batch is so strong. I believe the newer batches changed the back glass. I forget if it's like a little bit more frosted or a darker glass or something like that, but the older batches have that clear glass. And you can see how much I've used in my bottle, which is a pretty hefty dent for me, especially since I own around like 500 bottles. Now, I did get one compliment from a coworker. She told me I smelled amazing today about 10 times. I mean, every time I was around her, she kept saying how good I smelled. And then she's like, I'm just gonna follow you around so I can smell it all day. So yeah, this is the kind of fragrance that will absolutely get you attention because it doesn't really smell like anything else that the average person has smelled before. It's also funny because she was actually wearing Maison Margiela's Beach Walk, which is made by one of my favorite perfumers of all time. You guys probably know who it is, Jacques Cavalier, the in-house perfumer for Louis Vuitton. And I don't have much experience with Beach Walk, but man, she smelled very good too. I, of course, gave her a compliment. And she smells so tropical, very coconutty, like I was actually on a beach. So even though I was at work, every time I was around her, I felt like I was on vacation. And the performance of that, I think she said she sprayed like 2 or 3 times, was very, very good, which I wasn't expecting from a beach walk. But that's what I chose to wear for Thursday is 1 million lucky. Friday was in the high 30s and sunny outside. Like I said, the sun is finally starting to show itself. And I went with one of my favorite vanillas in my collection, and it is Nishane's Ani. Absolutely gorgeous vanilla that also has some pink pepper, I believe, in here, even though it kind of smells like black pepper to me, along with a nice kind of fizzy ginger and of course that very creamy, slightly spicy vanilla note. This one is truly just so good and one of my favorites from Nishane. Now, on that day, I did do 6 sprays of Ani. This stuff is potent, of course, being in a straight to parfum, very, very strong. And I was out grocery shopping, right? And I had this woman that was also grocery shopping. She kind of passed by me. She's like, oh my goodness, is that you that smells so good? I kind of like turned around and smiled and said, yeah, it's me. She's like, wow, that smells amazing. And of course, I just said thank you, went on grocery shopping or whatever. And she was on the phone at the time and I was just walking away after she complimented me. She was on the phone saying, wow, this guy that just walked by me smells so good. So of course, Ani gets compliments, but that's usually the thing with vanilla, even though this does also have a very woody base, which I have gotten kind of negative feedback on in the past, but at the end of the day, still will get you a ton of attention. So that's what I chose to wear for Friday is Nishane Ani. Wrapping the week off on Saturday, it was in the mid 40s and also sunny outside, and I pulled out a Tom Ford, which for some reason I haven't really been reaching for my Tom Fords lately, but I did go with the classic Noir de Noir, one of the original private blends from Tom Ford, and still holds up very nicely today. And I actually went with this one because, of course, my favorite perfumer made this as well, Jacques Cavalier, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And I've only worn this once since owning the bottle. And this actually reminds me a little bit of Ombre Nomad, which he also created. So you can definitely see he took inspiration from Noir de Noir when he made Ombre Nomad as well. Of course, because of the saffron, you have a slight hint of oud in here. Very, very rosy, kind of like a powdery rose. And if you love something like Ombre Nomad, definitely check out Noir de Noir, or vice versa. If you love Noir de Noir, check out Ombre Nomad because they are somewhat familiar. Even though Ombre Nomad is a little bit more fruity than this one, it's a little bit more heavy on the rose. Kind of just goes in the same direction. Now, on Saturday, I did do 6 sprays of Noir de Noir. Don't recall really doing much on Saturday, but man, I really enjoyed the wearing experience with this beauty. Just so happy to have this part of the collection as well, being one of the first private blends. So that's gonna do it for my weekly fragrance rotation. As always, leave a comment down below what you guys chose to wear throughout the week, because of course you guys always pull out bangers after bangers and I love to see it. But also leave a like on the video and subscribe if you guys haven't already. And of course, you already know, I'll catch all of you back here in my next upload. Take care, everybody.